So we got Blaydes versus Almeida, RDA versus Luque, Terrance McKinney versus Sadykhov, Blagoy Ivanov versus Alexander Romanov, and many more fight announcements to go over today. Starting off with the most recent one, Curtis Blaydes versus Jailton Almeida for a fight night main event in Sao Paulo, Brazil in November. Got announced yesterday, and it's definitely an exciting matchup in the heavyweight division. Look forward to this one a lot. It's going to really test the grappling of Jailton Almeida, and it'll be a good test. And if he wins this, then there's no doubt that he's in that top of the division, and he definitely deserves a title shot. So it'll be really good to see. As far as the prediction, I'm going to be going with Almeida as an early lean. I think he will win by a early submission. I think Blaydes is not the best when it comes to he's very plodding as he walks forward very flat-footed as well. And even though many people consider him to be a wrestler and that's what he is, that's his strength, he doesn't get shot on much, but he's actually got a 33% takedown defense accuracy. He got taken down 3 times in a fight earlier in his career, and since then he's pretty much just only fought strikers. So not many people to take him down, but Almeida will be certainly looking to do that, and I think he's going to succeed. I think the athleticism that Almeida possesses is going to really help him in this fight. Obviously, it's going to be a big, probably 20 or 30 pound size difference in this matchup. Almeida obviously can switch to light heavyweight. Blaydes is coming in at 265 every fight, but I think that once he gets him down, and I think Almeida will get a takedown early, I think he'll go for that same combination that he always does with that push kick up the middle, and then he'll shoot that blast double leg. And I think Blaydes will not be very equipped to handle that. I think obviously he'll be training his takedown defense, well, he should be, but I think also we've seen in his recent fights, Blaydes' fight IQ is something that costs him a lot, and that's just one of the reasons why he loses many of his fights. Obviously, you can go to his last fight with Pavlovich. He should have wrestled immediately, and he got starched on the feet with other guys as well. Like he falls in love with his hands, or then when he gets knocked out, he goes back to grappling. So if he comes into this fight with the mindset of offensive wrestling, and that's a terrible idea, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did that either. If he offensively wrestles against Almeida, I think he's going to end up getting subbed off his back because I don't think many heavyweights are used to their opponents having a guard game, which Almeida obviously would have. He's got elite jiu-jitsu. But I think what's more likely is that even if Blaydes fights correctly and fights to the game plan that he should and try and keep it on the feet, I think that Almeida will get him down once, and I think Blaydes will just be like a turtle off his back, and he'll just have nothing. I think the bigger you are, the worse it is for you when you're off your back. It is easier to defend in some cases, and it's easier to offensively wrestle. But once you're on your back and you've got a much more athletic, skillful jiu-jitsu guy like Almeida on top of you, working for positions, it makes it a lot harder to stand up. And obviously, as the fight goes on as well, once your strength wears down, once he's been taken down a few times, I think those takedowns are going to come easier, and I think it's going to be a lot easier for Almeida to hold control. But I actually think Almeida is going to get a sub in the first 2 rounds. I think I'm picking Almeida by a late round 1 or early round 2 submission, or maybe a TKO due to ground strikes, like we saw with the Shamil fight. Um, I think that it's just pick your poison when you fight with Almeida once you're on the ground, and I think he'll get Blaydes down, and I think he's gonna work him like he did with Rosenstrike. I think he'll work him like he did with Shamil, and he'll take as much time as he needs. Um, and I think he'll just make that really easy. Look easy once he's on top. So obviously the main part of the fight is whether he can get him down. Blaydes is obviously a very good wrestler, but I think Almeida will get the takedowns early and often if he doesn't hold him down. And I think looking at him, you can imagine he's going to have better cardio than Blaydes, better conditioning, I believe. Obviously, hasn't been seen because he's just been finishing everyone immediately. But I think looking at this fight right now, I'll rewatch some of Almeida's fights, or I'll watch some of Almeida's fights outside of the UFC. I'd like to see his striking as well because if Blaydes can defend the takedowns, then the fight gets a lot more interesting. Almeida does come from a boxing background. His family were boxers, and he kind of changed it up by becoming a grappler. But he does have that. He does have boxing, I believe, but I'll have to check because if he's just got no striking, and then Blaydes keeps it on the feet, it's going to be trouble for him, and it's not going to look good. But I do think Almeida will get the takedown, get the submission, and move up into the top five of the heavyweight division. And I think after a win over Blaydes, if Jones and Stipe fight in November and Jones wins, he said he's going to retire. Um, so if he does go ahead and retire after that, we could be seeing Almeida with a win over Blaydes the week before that November card. It's November 4th, and usually the MSG card is around, I think, the 10th of November, the second week in November. Um, we could be seeing an interim title or a vacant title being more likely booked between Almeida and maybe a Pavlovich, or maybe if Garn fights Pavlovich and wins, we could be seeing that. But I think if Almeida wins this fight, I think this is clearly his toughest test to date. And if he wins this fight, I think he's a future champion. I think him and Pavlovich are those two guys. Aspinall you can put in as well, which are really the future of the heavyweight division. Obviously, Garn, elite striker, but Jones exposed his grappling. So I think if it was to be Garn versus Almeida for a vacant belt, Brazil's getting another champion. That's what I'll say about that. But with my prediction, Almeida by I'm gonna say a round one start. That's quite a bold prediction. I think might have a change. Obviously, this fight's quite a while away. It's in November. Um, so there's nothing even announced past mid-August. So this is quite unusual for a main event to be announced this soon, but it is, and it's in Brazil. It's in Sao Paulo, so they're going to definitely stack that card with some Brazilian talent. Obviously, the last card Almeida did fight on in Rio. He was on the early prelims against Shamil, and now he's main eventing. So that shows that in the space of 11 months, you can go from being unranked, fighting on the early prelims, to being one win away from a title shot. That's how his career's gone, and I couldn't be happier for him. So moving on to the next fight announcement. RDA, Rafael dos Anjos versus Vicente Luque. This was announced a few weeks ago for a July 15th main event, and then since then it's got moved back and is now official for August 12th as a 5 round main event at welterweight. It's an interesting fight. Obviously, two Brazilians in this main event. RDA seems to be picking welterweight as his division now. Obviously, fought most of his career at lightweight, but he's looking at a welterweight fight now, and a top contender or top 10 fight in the welterweight division. And I'm actually going to pick him to win. I think this fight being 5 rounds, I think RDA's got the better cardio. He's been in those 5 rounders before. He's been a former champion at lightweight. And I think Luque recently, the Jeff Neal fight didn't look too good for him. I think RDA, he doesn't hit as hard as Jeff Neal, he's not as quick as Jeff Neal, but I still just think something's happened with Luque. I think he's past his peak, I'd say, which is sad to see because he was at one point a top contender, looking almost one win away from a title shot, and lost the decision to Bilal and then got KO'd viciously by Jeff Neal in a fight that on paper he shouldn't have really taken because it was fighting down the rankings for no reason, and he lost for it. But now he's going to be fighting RDA. This is a really fun fight. This is a good matchup. I can see this going the distance. RDA, I think he will probably see both of these guys are very well rounded everywhere, so it's kind of hard to see who's got advantages in each. Obviously, Luque you'd say would hit harder, but RDA, even in the Fiziev fight, which was his most recent lightweight fight, since then he fought Barberena at welterweight. But even in the Fiziev fight, he looked good. Like he wasn't losing by a lot. It was I think 3 rounds to 1 going into the fifth, and he did get knocked out, not flatlined, but he did get knocked out by Fiziev. But that's Rafael Fiziev. That's nothing to be ashamed of as well. Obviously, had a great fight, close fight with Gaethje recently. So that loss on your resume doesn't look bad whatsoever. Since then, he went up to welterweight, fought Barberena, got the submission in the second round, looked very good, but it's also Barberena. But so this is a hard fight to predict. I'm gonna have to look into it a bit more closer to the date. So August 12th, it is Fight Night main event. Um, and I'm gonna pick right now early lead. I'm gonna go RDA by decision. I think he's gonna have a bit more experience in those 5 rounders. In a 3 rounder, I'd probably be inclined to pick Luque by a decision or a finish. But I think Luque is gonna. I think he might not have the best cardio. Maybe I think RDA is gonna have better cardio, and RDA is gonna look better as the fight goes on, and really separate him and win those later rounds with the grappling and the striking mixed together. He's gonna win those later rounds dominantly, and if he wins this fight, he's ranked a welterweight. So he's looking at a top 10 guy after this at welterweight if he does win. If he loses, probably just be looking towards the fun fights. And then if obviously Vicente Luque wins, he's looking back towards those top fights, probably, or fighting down maybe one more time, maybe a Jack Della Maddalena with a win over Sean Brady. Those are the kind of names he's looking at. Um, but yeah, right now I'm gonna go with RDA. Very close fight though. That's a pick 'em fight in my opinion. Um, but yeah, moving on to Terrance McKinney versus Nazim Sadykhov, announced for July 15th fight night. That's main evented by Holly Holm versus Mira Bueno Silva. This is a good fight though between McKinney and Sadykhov. It's a very competitive fight. McKinney's obviously coming off the KO loss to Ismael Bonfim at UFC 283. It was a bad KO. Got flying knee and flatlined out cold. And Sadykhov is coming off the TKO win over Evan Elder in February from that cut stoppage. Evan Elder's also got a fight booked now, which I talked about last video. But this is a really competitive fight. I think if you ask me who was going to win this fight before the Bonfim fight with McKinney, I'd probably be leaning McKinney. But combined with the fact that McKinney's been flatlined, I think he's been exposed a little bit. He was throwing wildly in that fight and not landing a whole lot. And also that with Sadykhov's recent fight against Evan Elder, that really showed he's technically a very good fighter in that lightweight division. And he looked really good in that fight. It was a great fight. I would definitely recommend you guys go watch it. But him and Elder had a very back and forth fight, and on paper you'd say, "Oh, Elder hasn't won in the UFC," but that was a really high level fight, and he dropped Elder in that fight. Elder dropped him. It was a back and forth until he got that finish with with the kick to the head, which cut Elder open badly, and it was stopped pretty much immediately. Um, so I'm gonna go with Sadykhov by a decision or a late finish. I think he wouldn't be out of his way to be grappling as well in this fight. I think McKinney is at that stage in his career where he's gone to that classic stage of a hyped up fighter who's got who had the backing of the fans and the company. He got that 7 second KO over Matt Frivola, who is now ranked, but you have to really look at the skills there. Frivola, he's a good fighter, but I think technically I'd be inclined to say Sadykhov is better. So I'm picking Sadykhov to win a decision via just out techniquing and just being better than McKinney everywhere that the fight is. I think he'll be a better offensive wrestler. I think his striking is more technical. I think he's got more options with his striking as well, and I think he's a cleaner striker. I think if you look at the McKinney fight with Bonfim, even before the knockout, Bonfim was winning. He had success with the grappling as well. Um, and he was landing more than McKinney on the feet anyway. And McKinney was kind of just throwing wildly and didn't look like he was really comfortable in there. Maybe that was just the crowd nerves being in Brazil in front of Bonfim's home fans. Obviously, everyone knows the Brazil card is very intense. This fight is going to be at the Apex. But still, I just think I think his confidence will be shot from the knockout. Obviously, he's been like TKO'd before. He got TKO'd by Drew Dober, but I think it's a different thing. He got flatlined out bad by a guy making his UFC debut in Bonfim. And I think Sadykhov, he trains with those guys. He's at that Serra Longo team, coached by Ray Longo. He's training with guys like Frivola, who fought McKinney. He's training with guys like Aljo, guys like Marab, and he's got a really good team around him. And he's young too. I think him and McKinney are the same age, but he's younger in his career. I think he's been fighting in the UFC for less time, and I expect him to be making the more rapid improvements in his game than Terrance McKinney. So I think he's going to win a decision just through being better everywhere. So that's my thoughts on that fight. Moving on, we've got Alexander Romanov versus Blagoy Ivanov. He's a great fighter. I'd love to fight him. Um, July 1st, that fight's made for. So that's what's that? That's the Strickland versus Magomedov card. There's a really good card now. That's got tons of fights on there. It's got Kevin Lee versus Fakretinov. It's got Ismagulov versus Grant Dawson. Another fight that's been announced, Bonfim versus Benoit Saint Denis, which I'll talk about in a bit. So Romanov versus Ivanov, it's a good fight on that card. Kind of classic 10 to 15 ranked heavyweight fight. Nothing. It's in terms of how exciting the fight's probably going to be. It probably won't live up, but at least it's ranked names. It's two guys that are kind of in that area, in that 10 to 15 ranked spot. Romanov was a kind of prospect in the division, obviously, with the grappling, and he was winning fights dominantly. And then he really got exposed by Marcin Tybura to have a real cardio issue. Obviously, he gassed out in one round against Tybura, got lost the decision at Salt Lake City in altitude, so everyone kind of gave him the pass. He's like, okay, you had altitude, fair enough. But then the Volkov fight is really where I look to this, and I'm like, he gassed out after one takedown. Fair enough, Volkov grabbed the cage, but that's atrocious levels of cardio to be gassing out after shooting and failing one takedown. And he was just gassed. Volkov who's not even a grappler, Volkov just after that got him with like a snap down and just punched him in the face on the ground. And Romanov had nothing to do. He didn't know what to do. So it wasn't a good showing from Romanov. He put on weight from his last fight. He came in 20 pounds heavier, which was just really confusing and weird. But also, he's fighting Blagoy Ivanov, who is not a very good fighter either. He fought Tybura in his last fight, lost the decision. Tybura obviously won a decision against Romanov, so they have that common opponent there. I'm still gonna pick. I'm still gonna pick Romanov. I'll give him one more chance. If he loses this fight and looks terrible, I'm never picking him again, and I probably won't even have to because he's probably gonna get cut. If you lose like this and just dashes out and shows no improvements in his game, he's done. So I'm gonna give him one last chance, and I'm gonna pick him to win, by a submission against Blagoy Ivanov. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know what I'm benefiting the doubt in any way, but I think he'll win. I think he'll use the grappling early, and I think if he had a lot of success in the Tybura fight before the takedown. So there is skill there, um, in the grappling, but there's just no cardio. So if he does work on that cardio, I would definitely pick him to win. If I see him and he's trimmed back down and he's comes in at 250, 240 and looks in shape and I see him training hard and I see him putting in the effort to get that cardio, I'll be a lot more confident. So I will pick him, hoping that I don't mind him as a fighter, but I picked him against Volkov blindly, thinking that he would run through him with the grappling, which was a mistake on my part. And I was pretty annoyed at him for that performance of how bad he looked after one failed takedown. But I don't think Ivanov is anything special. I think Romanov at least has one area where he's good. I think Ivanov is just average everywhere. With his Romanov is average striking, terrible cardio, but good grappling. So if you can fix the cardio or maybe get some good striking, I can see him winning a decision. So I said submission earlier. I think decision's more likely. I think he'll win the first round dominantly, um, and I think he'll win the second round closely, start to tire, and I think Ivanov will win the third round, but I don't think it'll be enough to win him the fight. So I think Romanov will win maybe a split decision, get a bit of his confidence back, and hopefully can fix that cardio problem because that's a big issue in his game. That is, as I said, the July 1st card, so another good fight on there. Moving on, Hadley versus Ulanbekov. This is for August 5th, Jake Hadley versus Tagir Ulanbekov. That's a good fight. Flyweights going at it. Hadley coming off his first round's body shot KO over Malcolm Gordon. And Tagir Ulanbekov is coming off a submission win, and before that, lost to Tim Elliott. In this fight, I'm gonna be picking Hadley. I think he's a better fighter. I think he's at the skill of a top 15 fighter. He hasn't had that opportunity to show that yet. He beat Gordon in a round when Muhammad Makayev took pretty much the whole fight to get the submission and looked bad in that fight. And Makayev's ranked in top 15, and Hadley isn't. So I'm going to pick Hadley. Obviously, you think all on Bekov. You've got the OV, but I don't always. I'm a strong believer that you don't need to always pick the OV if you really do see the other fighter is just more skilled. Tagir, I don't think he'll take him down. I think Tagir's more of a striker. He didn't really take down Elliott too much in their fight. He got the submission win last November. But I think Hadley's better, younger, I believe. I think Hadley's going to be a bit more hungry. He's really calling for that Makayev fight. He wants Makayev in England. He wants to get that fight made. So he can expose him because that's what he doesn't believe Makayev's a good fighter. So I think he's a really motivated fighter right now. Young, he wants to be a UFC champion. I have no doubt that Tagir does as well, but I think the losses Hadley hasn't lost at the UFC level yet. Tagir has, so I think Hadley's going to win by a decision. That's the August 5th card, so that's another good fight added to that card. Another fight on that card, moving on, is Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Kyler Phillips, also for that August 5th card. Another really good fight. Saeed coming off the split decision loss to Jonathan Martinez. Kyler Phillips is coming off a year and a bit layoff, coming off a win, I believe. Yeah, he's coming off a win. And Kyler Phillips, he's a very good fighter, but I think just the activity of Nurmagomedov and how much more we've seen of him is why I'm going to be picking him to win a decision in this fight. I think Kyler Phillips, he's got a win over Song Yadong on his resume, which really should tell you that he's at that top 15 level, which I don't doubt that he is. But I just think Saeed, coming off that decision loss, which I personally think he won, but very close fight, he's hungry to get back and he wants to get into that top 15. I think I think he's a better grappling, I'd say. And I think he's a more dynamic striker with more weapons. So I'm picking him to win a decision. We'll get through some more quickly. Moving on, Ismael Bonfim versus Benoit Saint Denis for the July 1st card as well. So another good fight there. Bonfim, obviously, one of the Bonfim brothers, showed out really impressively in Brazil, knocking out Terrance McKinney in front of his home fans. That was a great moment, and I think it was his UFC debut, so a great moment for him. And he's fighting Benoit Saint Denis, who um he's the one that got absolutely put a beating on by Zaleski dos Santos a few years ago. Um, I think he's a tough fighter. I'm picking Bonfim to win by knockout. I think he's more hungry. I think he's younger in his career. Hasn't taken the damage that Benoit has. But I think this is going to be a really good fight, and I think Benoit can definitely. He's got the heart. He can bring it to him. Um, but I'm gonna pick Bonfim by knockout. So July 1st card's got another really good fight to look forward to. Bonfim coming off a 13 fight win streak, hasn't lost since 2011. So I think he's on his way. He's at lightweight, so it's a tough division to make it in, but I think he has the skills to become a ranked fighter, and he's quite young too. So moving on to Gabriel Bonfim versus Trevin Giles. So the other Bonfim brothers got a fight booked. Didn't get him on the same card this time, but still, July 29th, that's UFC 291. Gaethje versus Poirier, that's in Salt Lake City. I'm going to be picking Gabriel Bonfim. I'm high on these Bonfim brothers. I think they're both very good fighters. They're both very motivated in their career. And Gabriel Bonfim is undefeated. Ismael has lost before, but quite a while ago. Gabriel's undefeated and the younger brother. So he's actually the more promising, hyped up prospect in many people's eyes, and he's fighting Trevin Giles, who is a very middle of the road fighter. Lost to Dricus du Plessis a while ago on that McGregor Poirier card. Got knocked out by him, moved down to welterweight. He's had a few fights since. I think he's lost a few, won a few in there. But Bonfim, UFC debut, he got the 49-second guillotine win, but I don't want to, but I think he got the 49-second guillotine in his debut, but he did look a bit wild in there. I think that's more just octagon jitters, more debut nerves than anything else. So I'm going to trust him to not be throwing that wild in this fight as well. Um, and I think he's gonna. We haven't seen much of him in the UFC apart from that. Threw a few hands in the debut, got the sub, but I think he's gonna beat Giles by. I think he'll get a finish, maybe another submission. On that 292 card, which is looking really good. And there's two more fights on there that have been announced as well. One of them, Matthew Semelsberger versus Yohan Lainesse, and also Roman Kopylov versus Claudio Ribero. So first, Semelsberger versus Lainesse. I'm going to pick Semelsberger by knockout. I think he's a much better fighter. I think many people believe he got robbed by Jeremiah Wells. He had that fight, knocked him down in two of the rounds, but then got control time. So it was kind of an issue with the judging of, do you reward the knockdowns, the big knockdowns that hurt Wells, or do you um, reward the heavy control time without a lot of damage? So many people think Semelsberger won. I have no real opinion on it. I think it was very close, but I think Semelsberger's power, much more powerful and a better striker, and I think it's just a better fighter than Yohan Lainesse. Lainesse lost to Mike Malott. Um, Apart from that, doesn't have a lot of like really credible high level wins that we can say. Semelsberger stopped the brief hype resurgence of Jake Matthews, obviously last December, beat him by decision, knocks him down again in those two of the rounds. So that's something that Semelsberger's really got. He's got that power to really just halt you in your tracks and put you down, even if you're beating him. So I think many fighters are more technically better than him, like Matthews, like Jeremiah Wells. I think he's technically better than him, but I think Semelsberger is going to win this fight by knockout. I think this time he'll get one of those knockdowns, and I think it'll be worse than the last two, and I think he'll get the finish. The other fight on that 292 card, Roman Kopylov versus Claudio Ribero. I'm going to be picking Roman Kopylov by submission or knockout. I think he'll get a finish here. Maybe a decision though. I respect Ribero's toughness. He's coming off that win at UFC 288, the Sterling Cejudo card against, I think it was Joseph Holmes that he beat by a knockout in the second round. Looked impressive in that fight, but slowish. Like he didn't look super crisp, super powerful. He just looked. Well, he was powerful, but he didn't look really as poppy and as clean as Kopylov looked in his last fight against Soriano. It was. I think the style of this Kopylov's, I think, more well-rounded, and I think he's just a bit better. So I'm going to pick him to win. I'll give Ribero respect. I think Kopylov will win a decision. Ribero's tough. And the last fight that's been announced today, this is a new one. Gerald Meerschaert, GM3 versus Andrei Petrovsky for the August 19th card. That's UFC 292. I'm going to be picking Petrovsky. Petrovsky. I like Meerschaert a lot. Everyone loves GM3, but his last fight with Pfeiffer kind of just gave up, got knocked out. It wasn't a knockout even. He just kind of folded, just quit. So I'm going to pick Petrovsky to win a decision though through the grappling. He beat Wellington Turman at UFC 281 last November and looked very good doing it. Didn't get a finish, but looked dominant in victory. And I think he's more hungry right now than GM3. I think he's got some experience as well, so it's not going to be another one of those debuting fighters that gets thrown to GM3 and then Meerschaert stops the hype. I think Petrovsky's working on his game a lot, got a really strong grappling base, and he's definitely working on his striking. So I think he's going to win a decision or maybe a sub, but I think Meerschaert's good enough on the ground to avoid the submission. Um, I think there's a few more ones. Yana Santos versus Macy Chasson, July 1st. I'll go Santos. She lost to Holm, but no, was it Holm? Well, she lost her last fight on the Vera versus Sandhagen card. Um, but I think she's better fighter than Messi Chasson. Another one, Poliana Viana versus Yasmin Lucindo, August 12th. I'll go Viana. Think she's cleaner, quicker striker, better on the feet. A few fight changes. Jim Miller versus Jesse Butler. Jared Gordon got injured. I'll pick Jim Miller. Um, David Dvorak versus Stefan Erag. I'll go Dvorak. Schnell pulled out on that Canada card, which is taking a hit, so I'll pick Dvorak to win that. A few more. Joanne Wood versus Priscilla Cachoeira. I'll go Joanne Wood by decision. Classic women's fight. It'll look like Joanne Wood's last fight, I believe. Any more? Austin Lingo versus Maquelas Costa, July 15th. I'll go with Lingo. I think Costa, he's a bit too young. I think Lingo lost his last fight, but I think he'll win this. Costa he got Moises in his debut. He had to step in for Guram, so that's a tough debut. I'm just running through these quick, so I'm not thinking about these too much. Jamie Malarkey versus Naimov. That's tomorrow for the Kara France versus Elbazi card. I'll go Malarkey. Any more? Ode Osborne versus Uzu Elmabiev. I'll go Osborne. I haven't seen um Elmayev fight. I'll go Osborne. Beat Charles Johnson. It's a pretty good fighter. That's for the August 5th card. Um, what else is there? We've got John Castaneda versus Gafarov. That's tomorrow as well. I'll go Gafarov. Few more. These ones are a bit older. Around Nakamura versus Fernie Garcia. Nakamura by however he wants. He's a good fighter. Won his fight on the road to UFC, and I think he's a problem. Montserrat Ruiz versus Jacqueline Amorim. I'll go Amorim decision. Sabatini versus Lucas Almeida, June 17th. Sabatini's a very good fighter. I think he's top 15 caliber. I'll pick him to win. Albert Duraev versus Union Park. These are all been announced a few weeks ago, so excuse me if you already know about these. July 15th. I'll go Union Park. I think he's a very good fighter. I think he'll win through grappling. Any other ones? Nope, that's all. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Might be doing a post-fight reaction of the Kai vs Elbazi card. Do a full card reaction maybe. Or the next will just be another fight announcements video. Or maybe I'll do some predictions. The main predictions for UFC 289 of the good fights. The very few good fights that are on that card. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.